I'm Daniel. I was 29 years old when this happened, and I've never told the full story out loud before, because even now, saying it makes my chest tighten, like something is still listening. New Year's Eve has always been loud where I live. I was renting a small house on the edge of a quiet town in upstate New York, the kind of place where people set off fireworks in their backyards and no one complains. That year, I decided to stay home. No parties, no bars. I had just gone through a breakup and I didn't feel like pretending I was okay. It was snowing lightly, the kind that looks peaceful but muffles sound so much that the world feels wrong. I remember noticing how quiet everything felt around 9 p.m. No cars, no shouting, just that soft, deadened silence. Around 10:30, I heard someone knock on my front door. It wasn't loud or urgent, just 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced. I remember feeling annoyed more than scared at first. I assumed it was a neighbor or someone lost, which already felt strange because I didn't really know anyone nearby. When I opened the door, there was no one there. I stepped onto the porch, snow crunching under my feet, and looked around. My porch light illuminated the falling snow, the empty road, the trees. No footprints leading away, none leading up either. That's when I noticed something sitting right in front of my door. A champagne bottle. It was unopened, wrapped with a cheap silver ribbon, and attached to it was a small folded note. I picked it up, already feeling that uncomfortable prickle along my neck. The note just said, "Don't ring it in alone." No name, no explanation. I told myself it was some weird New Year's prank and brought it inside. I locked the door, double-checked it, and tried to laugh it off. But I didn't drink the champagne. I put it on the kitchen counter and couldn't stop looking at it like it might move. At 11:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text said, "You should be closer to the door." I froze. I checked my windows immediately. Curtains closed, doors locked. Nothing outside. I typed back asking who it was. The message didn't deliver. It just stayed there, unsent. Then the knocking started again. This time, it wasn't at the front door. It came from the back of the house, slow, deliberate, like whoever it was wanted me to know exactly where they were standing. I grabbed a kitchen knife. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I crept through the house, every floorboard sounding too loud, and stopped at the back door. The knocking stopped as soon as I reached it. I yanked the curtain aside. Nothing. But in the snow outside my back door, there were footprints now. Bare footprints. No shoes, just feet. They came from the woods and stopped directly at my door. I didn't open it. I backed away, locked myself in the bathroom, and called the police. While I was on the phone, something heavy hit the back door once. Not a knock, a slam. The dispatcher asked me if I could see anyone. I said no. I said, "Please hurry." At 11:58 p.m., my house went completely silent. No wind, no sounds, no movement. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Almost time. The police arrived after midnight. Fireworks were going off everywhere, bright flashes lighting up the snow. They searched my property and found no one. The footprints were gone, completely gone, like they'd never been there. They told me it was probably teenagers messing around, but one of the officers pulled me aside before leaving and asked me something quietly. He asked if I had invited anyone over. I said no. He nodded slowly and said, "That's good." I moved out 2 weeks later. I left the champagne bottle behind. I still don't know who knocked on my door that night. But every New Year's Eve since then, I get one text from an unknown number.
still not alone.
My name is Rachel. I was 24 years old when this happened, and ever since then, I refuse to celebrate New Year's Eve anywhere quiet. I don't care if people think I'm dramatic. I don't care if it sounds irrational. I need noise. I need crowds. I need proof that I'm not alone when the year changes. That year, my best friend Emily convinced me to take a road trip with her to a cabin her uncle owned deep in the mountains of Colorado. She said it would be peaceful, snow falling outside, a fireplace, wine, no cell service, just the two of us welcoming the new year away from everything. At the time, it sounded nice, romantic even. I had no idea how much I would regret saying yes. The drive started out normal. We left early in the afternoon, laughing, blasting music, talking about stupid resolutions we knew we wouldn't keep. But about an hour from the cabin, things started to change. The road narrowed to a single lane in places, the trees growing closer and closer until it felt like we were driving through a tunnel made of dark pine and shadow. Our GPS froze, then went completely blank. Emily joked that this was how every horror movie started. I laughed, but I remember glancing out the window and feeling uneasy. There were no other cars, no houses, no signs, just endless trees and snow that looked untouched, like no one had driven through there in a very long time. By the time we reached the cabin, it was already dark. The place didn't look like the photos Emily had shown me. In the pictures, it looked warm and inviting. In real life, it looked smaller, older. The wood was darkened with age, and the windows reflected the forest in a way that made the cabin look swallowed by it. The woods were too close. That's the only way I can explain it. The trees pressed in around the cabin like they were crowding it, like they were leaning forward to listen. I made another joke about horror movies, but my voice sounded thin even to me. Emily laughed, but I noticed something that stuck with me later. She locked the door the moment we stepped inside. The cabin smelled like dust and cold air. It took a while for the fireplace to warm the place up, and until it did, our breath fogged slightly when we talked. We explored the rooms, laughing, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. There were no neighbors, no nearby cabins, just us. Around 9 p.m., while we were sitting on the couch drinking wine, we heard footsteps outside. At first, I thought it was the wind shaking snow from the trees, but then it happened again. Slow, deliberate crunching sounds in the snow, moving around the cabin. We went silent. The footsteps didn't rush, they didn't stumble. Whoever it was walked with purpose, circling the cabin slowly, like they were taking their time. Emily whispered that it was probably an animal, a deer maybe. But animals don't walk like that. The steps were too even, too controlled, and they stopped every time we moved, like whoever was outside was listening to us the way we were listening to them. We turned off the lights and crept toward the window, barely breathing. Just beyond the edge of the porch light, near the tree line, someone was standing there. They didn't move. They didn't shift their weight or turn their head. They just stood there, facing the cabin, completely still. We couldn't see their face, just a dark shape against darker trees. I don't know how long we watched them. It felt like forever. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure they could hear it.
Finally, the figure turned and walked back into the woods. No rush, no fear, just calm, unhurried steps until they disappeared between the trees. We didn't sleep after that. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, clutching our phones even though there was no service, jumping at every sound the cabin made as it settled. At 11:40 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Emily started crying immediately, quiet, panicked sobs like she was trying not to be heard. I felt nauseous, My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. I shouted through the door, asking who it was. No answer. Then another knock, harder, more impatient. And then a voice. Wrong cabin. The voice sounded normal, calm, almost embarrassed, like someone who had genuinely made a mistake. Emily moved toward the door before I could stop her. She cracked it open just enough to speak. I whispered at her to close it, but she ignored me. The man outside said he thought this was his friend's place. He apologized, said he'd leave. I felt a tiny bit of relief until he leaned closer to the door. His face stayed hidden in the darkness, but his voice dropped when he spoke again. You shouldn't be here when the year turns. Then he stepped back and disappeared into the woods. At exactly midnight, every door and window in the cabin rattled at once. Not violently, not like someone was trying to break in.
Just enough pressure to let us know that hands were touching every entrance at the same time. We screamed. We ran into the bathroom and locked the door, huddling together on the floor while the sounds continued. Soft scraping, fingers, nails, testing, and then silence. We stayed there until morning. When daylight finally came, we forced ourselves to open the bathroom door and look outside. There were handprints on every window, pressed flat, perfectly clear, all of them facing inward. There were no footprints in the snow, none leading away, none leading up to the cabin. It was like they had never walked there at all. We left immediately. Months later, Emily told me her uncle sold the cabin. Before he did, he admitted something he had never mentioned before. People used to go missing on that mountain, almost always on New Year's Eve, and sometimes their handprints were the only thing anyone ever found.
My name is Marcus. I was 41 years old, freshly divorced, exhausted all the time, and working night shifts when I experienced the worst New Year's Eve of my life. I've worked security most of my adult life, and I thought I'd seen everything that an empty building could throw at you. I was wrong. I was assigned to an office building downtown, 23 floors, mostly empty after business hours. A lot of the upper floors hadn't been leased in years. Some still had old cubicles and furniture covered in sheets, like someone had just walked out one day and never come back. Most New Year's Eves were boring. The city would be loud outside, fireworks echoing between buildings. But inside, it was dead quiet. Just me, the hum of the lights, my radio, and a pot of coffee that tasted burnt no matter how I made it. That night felt wrong from the start. Around 10 p.m., while I was sitting in the security office flipping through camera feeds, I heard the elevator chime. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sometimes tenants forgot things. But then I noticed something strange. The call light on the panel wasn't lit. I checked the system logs. No elevator calls registered. Still, the elevator moved. I watched on the camera as it stopped on the 17th floor. The doors opened, no one got out, no one got in. Then the doors closed again and the elevator continued moving. It stopped on the 21st floor next. That floor had been closed for years. Water damage, mold, no power except emergency lighting, no reason for anyone to be up there. I picked up my radio and called out, asking if anyone was in the building. No response. By 10:30, the elevator had stopped on 5 different empty floors. Each time the doors opened, each time nothing happened. I remember telling myself it was a glitch, old building, old system, but the longer it went on, the more uneasy I felt. The building had a presence that night, like it was holding its breath. At 11:15, the intercom buzzed. It startled me so badly I spilled coffee on myself. I pressed the button and asked who was there. There was a pause. Then a voice came through, distorted, like it was coming from very far away, but clear enough that I understood every word. Let us out before the year ends.
I actually laughed. It came out nervous and forced, but I laughed. I thought it had to be a prank, maybe some drunk office workers messing around. I told them the building was closed and to head to the lobby. The intercom clicked off. That's when the cameras started glitching. The feeds flickered, jumping between floors too fast to follow. But when they paused, I saw things that didn't make sense. Hallways that didn't exist anymore. Old carpet patterns I remembered from when I first started. Furniture that had been removed years ago. On one screen, I saw a row of cubicles that had been cleared out long before I was hired. On another, I saw people sitting in them. They weren't moving, just sitting there, facing their desks. I leaned closer to the monitors, my mouth dry. The camera angle shifted, and the cubicles were empty again. At 11:40, the elevator stopped in the lobby. The doors opened. No one came out, but the temperature dropped instantly. The air felt thick, stale, like a room that hadn't been opened in decades. At 11:50, every elevator door in the building opened at once. I heard them all, echoing through the empty floors, chimes ringing one after another, doors sliding open. That's when I heard the footsteps. They came from everywhere at once, soft at first, shuffling, uneven, like people who hadn't walked in a very long time were trying to remember how. I locked myself in the security office and watched the monitors with shaking hands. Figures began appearing on the screens. They moved slowly, awkwardly, like their joints didn't work the way they were supposed to. Some stopped in hallways and just stood there. Others pressed their faces close to the cameras, mouths slightly open, eyes unfocused.
They didn't look angry. They looked tired. At exactly midnight, every screen went black. The lights flickered once, twice, and then everything was quiet. When the power came back, the building was normal again. Clean hallways, empty elevators, no figures, no old furniture. I sat there until morning, too afraid to move. Before my shift ended, I checked the system logs one last time. The building occupancy count was wrong. According to the system, dozens of people were still inside the building, people who had never badged in. I quit the next day. The building was demolished a few years later. They said it was cheaper to tear it down than to renovate. Last New Year's Eve, I was sitting at home watching the countdown on TV when my phone rang. Unknown number. When I answered, I heard the same distorted voice. Next time, don't lock the doors. The call ended at midnight. I haven't worked nights since.